this one finds her still on the run from the mafia boss lady played by Rhea Perlman, and on the way she encounters, as she did previously, a number of different murder mysteries, or shall we say cases that need solving through her own distinctive style. What actually ultimately carries the series, as you can imagine, is the presence of Charlie Cale, is the presence of Natasha Lyonne, as she sort of careens between various scenarios and brings her own sort of Columbo-esque distinctive style. So ultimately what you get with Poker Face Season 2 is more of the same. The thing that made the first season so successful is this sort of like bohemian, like slightly off-kilter characterization, which is sort of like a Captain Jack / Columbo confluence. Yes, there is a formulaic element to Poker Face which is unavoidable, but nonetheless it is the guest star spots and it is the way that she figures out the various shall we say crimes. But the problem is that, yeah, there are certain points where it tends to drift off. So I'm going to be giving Poker Face Season 2, which is out on Peacock on May the 8th, a 4 out of 5 on the big old 5 scale. Why? Because Natasha Lyonne as Charlie Cale once again carries the show on those slender shoulders, and she really does bring a unique spin to it, an already tried and tested formula. It is essentially about a crash landing in the middle of the Mexican jungle, and 9 strangers who apparently have absolutely no connection, who are trying to survive until they get rescued by either the Mexican militia or the DEA or other, shall we say, interested parties. That 9 Bodies in a Mexican Morgue has a tremendous amount of potential, but whether or not it actually takes full advantage of that potential is very much up for debate. It does take a great deal of time to gain any traction. There doesn't feel like there is a tremendous amount of murder mystery going on. There are murders, but there's not a great deal of mystery. It really doesn't feel particularly cohesive, and this has been a problem. This is a problem across the entire series, which I've just finished reviewing. There is so much potential in 9 Bodies in a Mexican Morgue. I really want to make that clear, because I don't want this to come across as if I'm throwing it under the bus. But there are so many opportunities where things could have been done better. So I'm going to be giving 9 Bodies in a Mexican Morgue a 3 out of 5 on the big old 5 scale, because, as I said, the characters, it's just a little too much of a mishmash of different elements which really don't come together. So Dope Thief is essentially about Ray and Manny. Ray is played by Brian Tyree Henry. Manny is played by Wagner Moura. And they basically turn over a meth farm. This is just outside Philadelphia where they're based. It's one of those, feels like a family melodrama almost. So they turn it over. Essentially, they are con men. They are trying, they con people out of their drugs and so on and so forth, and their cash by claiming to be DEA agents. They pull the same stunt turning over a meth farm, but they just turn over the wrong people. So ultimately the whole turning over of the meth farm turns out to be just a jumping off point for getting into the ins and outs of Ray's sort of family life. He has his mother is Teresa, who isn't actually his mother, it's sort of his stepmother almost, who raises him, and the relationship between Tyree Henry and Mulgrove is really, really interesting. And then on the outskirts of that, you've got Bart, who is his father, played by Ving Rhames, doing a really excellent job, really understated performance, and it flashes back and forth between his sort of upbringing, which goes into black and white, and then his present day situation, and essentially Ray is there trying to hold everything together, hold everybody together, keep everybody safe. Right, so I'm going to be giving Dope Thief 4 out of 5 on the big old 5 scale. Why? Because these characters are really well drawn. The drama itself is very engaging. It has a slow burn quality to it as well. Visually, it looks very interesting. So the first thing to strike you about Duster will be the fact that it is pure 70s chic. They've got the period absolutely bang on the money. They've got some absolutely smoking hot needle drop moments. They've got a soundtrack to die for. This is J.J. Abrams and LaToya Morgan on absolute full power. Josh Holloway, who said is alumni from Lost and played Sawyer for 120 odd episodes, is the rail thin bag Bagman who works for Ezra Saxton, played by Keith David. This is just such a cool show. So the thing to be admired most about Duster, I think, is that sort of like the amount of complexity that goes into the plot, that goes into the way that the characters are interconnected, and the way that it literally does touch on relevant issues of the time, from the Watergate break-in through to the aftermath of Vietnam and the assassination of JFK, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. This really has serious political gumption. So I'm going to be giving Duster a 4 out of 5 on the big old 5 scale. Why? Because the characters are absolutely excellent. Donald Logue, who is possibly better known as Harvey Bullock from Gotham, is completely unrecognisable as Sergeant Grooms, whilst, as I said, Josh Holloway really does own the role of Jim Ellis. The thing about Havoc is this is a police procedural action thriller with serious kung fu action chops, and Hardy is front and centre. He is a dysfunctional father. He's not particularly, should we say, he doesn't exactly stick to the rules. Timothy Oliphant is there, present and correct, as the villain in situ, and it is all overseen by this sort of political bad guy played by Forrest Whitaker, who isn't so much on autopilot but has certainly done this a million times before. So right off the bat, I'm going to tell you for free that this is a film which relies so heavily on its action set pieces, which are absolutely astounding, and the car chases and every element of action cinema which Gareth Evans has managed to conjure on screen is absolutely mind-blowing. But, and this is the problem, the Tom Hardy movie itself doesn't really have a great deal of character development. It deals in archetypes. It deals in very cut and dried bad guy, good guy sort of dynamics. If you are one that's going to be overwhelmed by action and sort of enmeshed in these character beats and these sort of like whip pans and all sorts of manner of other character elements and camera moves, then this might well be the film for you. So I'm sad to report that I'm going to be giving Havoc, which is currently streaming on Netflix, a 3 out of 5 on the big old 5 scale. My hopes were high, my appetite was whetted by an absolutely awesome trailer, and yet unfortunately everybody seems to be, aside from Hardy, is on absolute beast mode in this movie. Everyone else seems to be doing it by the numbers. The Gorge sort of feels like it's quite a mishmash of different genres. It is a survival horror, essentially. It's also got some government political stuff going on in the midst of it. Miles Teller plays US operative Levi, who's had confirmed kills into the hundreds. Seems like an ice-cool customer, and is given this mystery assignment by Sigourney Weaver, who plays his superior. He gets to this outpost with these two massive towers overlooking this gorge, and his opposite number happens to be Drasser, played by Anna Taylor-Joy. Well, and between them, unsurprisingly, there forms a connection despite the chasm, and it's a really odd mishmash of sort of action adventure slash rom-com slash horror. So despite my misgivings going into this Apple original, The Gorge actually seems to deliver. Miles Teller and Anna Taylor-Joy certainly come through it in terms of the action stakes. I think the effects are really solid. The bits which seem to falter tend to be the rom-com elements, where they feel a little bit contrived and a little bit superfluous almost. It does bind them together, but it does feel very awkward, especially at the distance that they're at. So for me, The Gorge sits somewhere between a 3.5 and a 4 on the big old 5 scale. The characters are well drawn, but they are archetypes, they are stereotypes. Taylor-Joy and Miles Teller and Sigourney Weaver all deliver, and Scott Derrickson's direction is accomplished, if a little bit workmanlike. Cooper is this financial wizard. He's been in the markets for decades. He's at the top of his game. In short order, he loses his wife. He comes home, finds out his wife has been having an affair with an NBA player, and then he undergoes some sort of like professional espionage and sabotage by a colleague, having had an ill-advised tryst with a younger colleague of the female variety, who works in a different department apartment within his building. Slowly but surely, the pieces of Cooper's life begin to collapse around him. Does he fold? Does he sort of like curl up in a ball and hope it all goes away? This is Jon Hamm. This is Don Draper. Let's not forget that he was Madman or Mad Men. So no, he doesn't. He takes matters into his own hands and he finds a way through it. So in those first 3 episodes, at least, what you do get is a really solid, character-driven comedy drama with Jon Hamm front and centre. As I said in the last segment, his life literally starts to sort of implode around him. Amanda Peet is very good. Olivia Munn really delivers. And there are a number of other character actors within this ensemble that really make this show come alive. So I'm going to be giving Your Friends and Neighbours a 4 out of 5 on the big old 5 scale, because this is a Jon Hamm juggernaut which really delivers on character, on comedy, on thrills, on tragedy, across the board. So first, the good news. Final Reckoning is everything you would expect from a Mission Impossible franchise closer. Yes, there's action. Yes, there are spills and chills. There is decent character development, and Tom Cruise is on absolute dynamite form, as is an absolutely shining ensemble cast. But the problem is those first 40 minutes. In 40 minutes, you get so much exposition thrown at you as an audience member that it becomes almost overwhelming. It doesn't really feel, at least in those first 40 minutes, it doesn't feel like a Mission Impossible movie. At least it doesn't feel that there isn't that emotional connection. You don't feel tied in or invested into the consequences of what's going on, and ultimately there are far too many callbacks. Final Reckoning makes a big point of saying that life is a sum of the choices that we make, and ultimately, Tom Cruise, if that's the case, then you have made some absolutely awesome choices. The biplane sequence on its own is absolutely awe-inspiring, and there is an underwater sequence which actually may be a standalone as one of the greatest Mission Impossible set pieces ever devised or executed. And ultimately what drives this movie and what has carried this franchise through from beginning to end is an absolutely blind commitment to these cinematic set pieces, to this devotion to character, to making Ethan Hunt feel as fragile as he possibly can. But the thing about committing all of these stunts to celluloid is the fact that there are very few movie stars like Tom Cruise, if any, left. I'm going to be giving Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning 4 out of 5 on the big old 5 scale. 4 because ultimately those first 40 minutes really do hamper an impressive swan song to the Ethan Hunt journey. And so it is, you've reached the end of another video review, this time for Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning, which is currently in selected cinemas and will no doubt be available on home entertainment very, very soon. So this is the bit where I go, if you've liked the video, then give me a thumbs up. Failing that, you can always drop a comment in the comment box below and I will respond. And finally, just subscribe so that every Tuesday and every Saturday when I drop another of these videos literally into your lap, you get a little notification and you can pop in and watch or listen to as much or as little as you'd like, and then go about your day. In the meantime, check out the rest of the channel, maybe pop over to the Patreon page. Take care. Cheers.